E3 2017 is all over, folks, and we got to see a whole new slew of exciting new entertainment. Far Cry 5, Beyond Good and Evil, Transference, which looked really cool, Mario and Rabbids, I'm excited for, new Star Wars Battlefront, a game called A Way Out, Ashen, Anthem, Crackdown 3. What am I missing, guys? Anything off the top of my head?
Spider-Man!
Cuphead.
All right. So there's a lot of really exciting titles, and we've already discussed who we thought won E3. I thought it is appropriate to look at all of the offerings of this year and try to decide what the theme is. We've heard of the Year of the Dragon, Year of the Goat. E3 2017 is the year of... We've decided as a group here, I'm Andy Burkowski, joined this week by Liam Brand and Jesse Earle. Three white dudes to tell you that E3 2017 is the year of diversity. And we're saying that with a thumbs up, not a thumbs down. There are a lot of games that were announced, new games or takes on established brands that include underrepresented groups of people, whether it's women, whether it's visible minorities, just not the same grizzled white dudes. Now, there is, of course, God of War. There is, of course, Days Gone, so you still get your titles. It's there. But, Liam, why don't we share some of the story, some of the titles that we saw at E3 that are diverse and have a diverse lead. You with me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's most of the hyped up and exciting games, the big AAA titles that have a lot of diversity and that are the most diverse. Anthem, even though you choose your own character, that was a woman in the trailer. We got Star Wars Battlefront 2, Crackdown 2. We got Terry Crews playing the...
Crackdown 3.
Crackdown 3.
Yes.
We got...
Terry Crews, the Ubermensch.
Oh, yeah.
Probably shouldn't say that.
We saw, even in Wolfenstein, you're still playing as the same like grizzled white guy, but when you look at the cast of supporting characters, it's quite diverse as well. What am I missing here?
You're missing a lot. We got FIFA's new story mode with Hispanic. We got Madden NFL new story mode. League guy is black. Beyond Good and Evil, you're either playing as a half monkey man or more likely the lead female that was shown in the trailer. Assassin's Creed Origin, you're an Egyptian Nubian man.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Black as hell. You look badass. You literally have the Anubis death god head on when you kill people. I'm down with that. We're getting an expansion for Uncharted.
Oh, yeah.
Can't believe it. An expansion for Horizon Zero Dawn, which is another Aloy story. Dishonored 2, their expansion, you're playing as Billy Lurk, which is a black woman from the first game. And, of course, Metroid Prime, we're bringing Samus back into the fold. So we have a slew of titles, over 11 different games that were introduced or referenced in E3 this year that have underrepresented characters in them, leading the cast or at least supporting it. I think this is a pretty, and yeah, this is virtue signaling, everyone get your antennas up in the air, but it is a bit of a difficult choice for developers to make such a concurrent decision, considering the little slice of YouTube culture that we get to see here. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who really like video games seemingly are not very progressive.
Yeah, and it's interesting for developers to make that choice because you look at, television and big movies and you don't see the level of diversity that you do see in games now. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that that decision has been made because, typically gamers or typically the loudest shouting of the gaming community are avidly against feminism and against representation. Yeah. It's like, one of the most notorious anti-liberal campaigns is like Gamergate right now. Mm-hmm. And Gamergate. So as a developer, you'd think it was almost suicide to start pushing diversity in your games. But I for one, am really glad that this is something that's happening.
Yeah, it's exciting for us for a lot of reasons, but we should touch on that subject a little bit more. We run the channel here in our show, and there is a lot of people that choose to comment on how insidious and evil SJWs and this kind of cultural touchstone is in the video game community. So I cannot believe that we have 11 AAA titles that have hundreds of millions of dollars behind it that have females as leads. When I think about why this is important even to people that are not of that particular persuasion, that are not black or women or Hispanic or, the different genders that are being spoken of here. It's important to myself, to Liam, and to Jesse because we want to experience stories that are different. And that's, I think, why I play video games, because I want to experience a world, a story, a mechanic that is alternative to my own incredibly exciting life. And there's a few games that really spoke to the idea of what it's like to be either a woman or of a different race in a really compelling way. I know, Liam, we got a kind of a short list of games that did that for you and I.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Horizon Zero Dawn is one that you mentioned and is our game of the year so far, I
Absolutely.
think.
Absolutely.
And that gives you a whole lot of really interesting perspectives, and especially motherhood, which is one you've gone into deeply before.
Oh, yeah. I've spent a lot of time talking about how Aloy made me feel things about yearning for a mother that I will never understand because of my penis. Yeah, honestly, I think there's a perspective there, and if you're listening to this saying, of course, there's nothing like identity politics, but there is something about that human connection, that biological connection, that I think is alien to everyone in this room, and that's okay. Playing Horizon Zero Dawn, I got to understand it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's great. Like, I didn't know that beforehand.
It doesn't feel like alienation, like, oh man, I can't relate to this. It's immersing you in a new perspective that you haven't ever experienced before.
Mm-hmm. So what else do we got?
We've got Mass Effect, which is something you've mentioned that even when you play
Have I talked about Mass Effect before?
I think on the show we've touched on it briefly
That's
for a couple
weird.
videos.
Yeah.
And when you play Mass Effect as a woman, or a woman or a man, they're two pretty different experiences, just even in the characteristics of it, as how different characters interact with you, your romance options even.
That Garrus booty, baby.
And even outside of that, it gives you a lot of, because of how you connect with other characters around you and how deeply you connect with them, you get a lot of perspective into their lives. And, you talk to a lot of people of different walks of life in that game. And I think,
I spoke about it there. I did a little quip about Garrus's booty, but
yeah,
that's a great point, Andy, because the relationship you have with Garrus playing as FemShep versus Male Shep, even if he's your brother and you're fighting for freedom versus a romance, is a remarkably different insight into the nuanced portrayal of that character. And I wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't play that game again as another gender. They didn't really touch anything on race, unfortunately, but we have found that a lot of these games either do one really well and the other one not quite as good. No one can be perfect. But another one that kind of bounced off the page for me is a game that really, really blew me away. 1979, The Revolution. It was looking at the Iranian Revolution. And the guy that made it worked really, really hard to speak to the truth of that era and allow us to appreciate it through gameplay. He used pictures from his own home because he lived through it. And it's something that I didn't know a lot about. And once you're done that 3-hour experience, not a AAA title, but it is one of the most eye-opening ways to see what it's like to live in a new place and through a time of history that was pretty harrowing. I think the last one that we got that really spoke to us all, that kind of hit under the radar, Overwatch. One of the biggest games of the year, right, Liam? Mm-hmm. Has some pretty great representations, at least for women.
Yeah, well, outside of women, I think it represents, members of the LGBT community. You have two, actually, I think more than two, openly gay characters. Symmetra is autistic, and I don't think that's something you see represented in games a lot. People of different mental ability or whatnot. And yeah, its cast at this point with all the DLC is more women than it is men. And I think that was grammatically just a nightmare, that sentence.
I think that's really important.
That's very important, and that's very new.
Because Overwatch is one of the most popular games for a really competitive community. And the idea that so many of the people, the options that you have as players are non-binary, non-white man options really speaks to the fact that you can still be really popular and not have Nathan Drake as your protagonist. Mm-hmm. So if you're already in this camp and you think, well, Andy, I think this is great that we got a lot of POCs and ladies in our games. It's fun. I want to. Aloy's my homie. I love this. Great, awesome. But chances are you're not. Chances are you're someone that watched some of our Mass Effect stuff, maybe had a bit of an interest in some of the Prey stuff that we talked about, and is now seeing some SJW cuckboys talking about things they don't understand. Well, I think it's important that this kind of viewpoint, the reasonable ones at least, get addressed. So we brought in Jesse Earl, who, disclaimer, which is underneath, in no way hates women or thinks that they should be out of our video games. Right, Jesse?
Really, yes, exactly.
Yeah. You're down with the ladies, down with all the different races.
I've got no problem with any of that in my video games. In fact, give me a little bit more.
Okay. So I tasked you with kind of looking at the alternative perspectives that might disagree with having 10 major AAA titles that have POCs and women in them. The more reasonable disagreements. What do you got for me? What do you think is the most reasonable critique of this newfound diversity in video games?
Yeah. So in some of these stories, we're getting characters that have been shoehorned in for nothing more than just checking boxes, right? They're not really in here to be properly represented, and the story doesn't really revolve around them or show what they care about very well. You get games like Mass Effect Andromeda with Hanley Abrams, a character who identified as transsexual, and after 5 minutes of talking to your character, told him or her
5 seconds.
5 seconds even, told him or her their original birth name that they no longer identify with. As a transsexual person seeing that, you know that's not something that actually happens. You would never tell that to somebody you've just met. So these characters aren't being properly represented, they're not being properly written, and they're not giving their fair chance to really shine in these games and become true main characters like they should sometimes and really have well-written stories surrounding them.
So, Liam, I think that's fair. I think that is a fair concern that if you are putting these different representatives into your video games, that they should be put in well. Because something is not done well, to answer this, Jesse, doesn't mean you need to get rid of it entirely. Because a process is a process doesn't mean we should try to stop being progressive because, we've made some mistakes. And I think that is a lot of the established criticism from people that do think that way, that believe, well, since it's bad, we don't need it in there. But I think it's a little disingenuous, too. I don't think it's people that actually care about transgender individuals. It's people that just want a more reasonable excuse to label their bigotry. Anything else to add to that criticism there, Liamo?
I think it's fair, but I think, we can put the trust into most game developers to, develop interesting and in-depth characters who are people of color, who are women, without, using negative stereotypes or anything like that. I think it's better to have that faith in the writers and developers than to just say, no.
Faith.
Exactly.
Jesse, what else we got?
That straight people can't really portray these characters, and that really is kind of the underlying problem.
What was that?
That straight people that are white men like you, me, and Liam,
we are
can't.
that.
Yeah, indeed. And
Point.
we're also 2 out of 3 for beards. That we can't really
Thanks,
properly
Jesse.
portray these characters the way that they should be portrayed. It's kind of highlighting a problem in the gaming industry right now. Maybe we're not diversified enough at the source of where these games are coming from. Maybe the reason we're getting these characters is because the people writing them don't have insights into things like transsexuality, like what it means to be a woman, like what it means to be a person of color in the world today and in worlds previous. And maybe we need to start diversifying a little bit as far as writing and development goes.
I think that is a criticism that people have, but I don't think, again, it's a lot like the first one, that it's a haven for those that are bigoted to seem more reasonable. Because absolutely, if we're having stories that involve motherhood, it's probably beneficial to have someone who is a mother to speak to it a little bit. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's absolutely a requirement, because John Gonzalez is the guy, I believe I'm saying his name right, was the lead writer on Horizon Zero Dawn and was able to make a story that was beautiful in that way. We don't need to limit creators and say you can't talk about that, but we also need to make sure that there is more of it. So again, if your biggest criticism for diversity in video games is the fact that the people making it aren't as diverse, I would say you're right. Let's try to make that more diverse and keep this train going. Anything else you got there, Giussiano?
Only one more point, and that's that by integrating these characters sometimes as main characters in your game, playing as a woman like
Tomb Raider, Horizon Zero Dawn.
yes, all of these characters whose names I can't remember right now.
Doesn't like
all
women.
of these characters, you're alienating some players from enjoying your story. Now, again, I don't really share a validity with this, but some people might see something like the brand new Uncharted game and see two female characters, and you're probably going to be playing as one, and they don't want to align with that. In Skyrim, if you're giving them the choice between a man and a woman, or in Mass Effect, where you have the choice between male shep and fem shep, most people are going to pick the male character because that's what they identify with. So when you're forcing somebody into playing like something like Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, you're alienating their experience a bit, and you're kind of forcing them to not want to play your game.
All right, Liam, why don't you take this one? Because I do understand the personal preference position a little bit. Because as much as I have spouted for years here how great it is to play as FemShep or to play females in different video games, 9 times out of 10, when I get a choice, I'm playing a dude and he's having a beard if I can make a character creator. Because that's how I choose to play the game. So I understand there's a little bit of hypocrisy in my own pocket when it comes to that, but Liam, what do you
hypocrisy
think?
pocket.
That keep around my chest, right near my heart.
Yeah, I think that's, it's a valid opinion to have, but I don't think that's any reason to, even bring to an argument, because it doesn't really hold much weight. When you think about it, like, there really haven't been a whole lot of games where women are properly represented or people of color are properly represented.
Resented.
And like, why don't they deserve that same experience? I bet they're also sick and tired of playing as just men or playing as just white guys. So while you may have that preference, that's no reason to prevent other people from having that experience.
Yeah. So I guess you can have a personal choice, but it's important to recognize that I have a lot of options. So if I don't want to play Tomb Raider, that's okay, because there's 150 other games I can play that stars a white dude. If you're a woman and you don't want to play Tomb Raider, you have lost like 33% of all of the female-led games that you could play. That is it for us on Point of Interest this week. Liam, anything final to say about E3 2017, the year of diversity?
I think it's great. I think hopefully that's going to be the norm from now on, that we see, a very even distribution of different kinds of people as protagonists in our game. And I think there's very few bad things that can come from that.
I agree. This is VGS, Mandy Burkowski.